Hey y'all, it's Doc Phoenix here with some news you can use. It is October, which means it's one of my most favorite times of the year. Why? Because Halloween is in October. However, as a sexologist, sex educator, kink educator, I have something else to celebrate, and that is Kinktober. So yeah, October rolls around every year, and so does Kinktober. What is Kinktober, you ask? It is a month-long celebration related to all things that are kinks, fetishes, and sexually related. It provides a platform for open and healthy conversation around human sexuality, consent, and a diverse range of desires that exist. Kinktober promotes sex positive and inclusive atmosphere, emphasizing safe, consensual, and respectful exploration. And we know if you are in the kink world, or just anyone, because this can apply, consent is always key. So this is a time to educate people on kinks and just all of the fun and kinky things. So this month we'll be talking about different things such as kinks and fetishes and philias. Oh my. And you might wonder what those are because oftentimes they can be used interchangeably, but they are very different. So when we think about kinks, we think about things that are just outside of the what we'll call the ordinary. And when we think about ordinary, it's often termed as vanilla. And don't get me wrong, vanilla is not a bad thing at all. But in order to have like a baseline, we just call it vanilla. And so vanilla is your typical what you enjoy. Usually it's very lights off, heteronormative, the way you think of sex or the way you grew up thinking of sex before you realized that there were more things. And again, there's nothing wrong with that because if we think about flavors, vanilla ice cream is fine on its own, but it's not until we add different things like our chocolate and our toppings or whatever it is that you please that you get it to your liking. So when we want to think about a baseline of how we figure out what kink is, we think about vanilla being our base. Again, nothing wrong with it because vanilla is a flavor all on its own, but anything beyond that is considered to be kinky. And some would say that all fetishes are kinks, but not all kinks are fetishes. So by definition, kink refers to unconventional sexual preferences or activities that go beyond traditional or vanilla sexual norms. It's missionary, like I said, between a man and a woman. Lights are probably off. And again, I'm definitely not shaming it, but that's what we talk about when we talk about vanilla sex. So, or not just sex, because kink is beyond that. So kink can involve some type of power dynamics, role playing. Oftentimes we've heard of BDSM, which is bondage, discipline, or dominance, sadism, and masochism, or even unique forms of stimulation. Kinks are often situational desires or acts that enhance pleasure, but they don't necessarily have to be centered around a person's arousal or sexual identity. Essentially, a kink can make a sexual experience more exciting, but it doesn't typically stand as a prerequisite for sexual satisfaction. On the other hand, a fetish is a more intense type of sexual focus on a specific object or body part or scenario that is necessary for arousal or an orgasm. And so we've often heard of fetishes around things like feet or leather or latex or hosiery or something like that, which becomes the primary, that makes it different, the primary source of erotic excitement. Meanwhile, philias, we kind of go off into the DSM or like some diagnoses here, but they represent a deeper, sometimes more psychological attachment to certain sexual stimuli. While the term philia can simply mean a love for in a sexual context, it often refers to extreme attractions or desires that could be considered unusual, obsessive, or even problematic on a specific philia. So they tend to be more perversive in nature. Like I said, even sometimes diagnosable. They are psychologically driven, often crossing into the line of fixation or compulsion, distinguishing them from more casual kinks or focused fetishes. So as we go through some of the things I want to talk about this month, There will definitely be a differentiation between kinks, fetishes, and philias. So I just want to give y'all some basics before we dive into Kinktober and what you should keep in mind when you're referring to kinks and fetishes. If you're interested in exploring a kink or a sexual fetish with your partner or partners, I always like to say that communication is key. I'm going to always preach communication because nobody else knows what you're thinking. You may have something on your mind, something may be pleasurable to you, but that person or those people have no clue until you're able to open up and effectively tell them what's going on. So communication is going to always be key. Be sure to talk to your partner or partners about what you want, and make sure that the timing is optimal. You know, you may be thinking like, when is the right time? I mean, just let's employ some rational logic here. So if you're if you want to introduce something to someone, you wouldn't want to do it at a time that they are preoccupied or maybe not in the best mood, or maybe once you just first meet them. I get to thine own self be true and being very open about what you want up front, but kind of get to know a person first. So read the room, consider the timing, and then determine whether or not that's a good time to approach your partner or partners with it. Make sure you come informed. There's nothing worse than coming to somebody with a half-assed attempt of explaining, well, I think it's like this and I think it's like that. And especially to a person who they may not be as open as you are, but come informed. Come with your notes, do your research, share well-informed and reliable information. Share articles, videos, books, and information from sex researchers, academics, educators, and therapists, normalizing, because oftentimes people don't normalize kinks and fetishes, but normalizing and supporting your interests. Your goal is to be confident and informed and to put your potential partner's fears and anxieties at ease. So approach this thing like you are going in and defending your dissertation, because you are now the expert, because you are introducing this to someone. You want them to come on board. And again, as we get a little bit further, we're going to talk about consent, because nothing is going to be done without consent. But you want to present it to them in a form so they know that they're comfortable. They know that you are informed and why you're actually into this thing. And it's not just like a phase or something that'll pass or some silly thing that you have going on. So be informed and ready to talk to people. And one of the most important things when exploring any type of sexual kink or fetish will always be mutual consent before beginning play. Respect is paramount. And understanding that not everything is for everyone. And that should always be in the forefront of your mind. Just because you want to experience certain things with certain people does not mean that they'll be as open. So keep that in mind, because just like you're wanting them to come in with an open mind, you need to be informed and have an open mind and understand not everything is for everybody. And it's not going to be like that all the time. So if you feel like you're doing more coercing than educating, then you're already violating boundaries, and it may be an indicator that you should be talking to them about exploring any kinks or fetishes. So when we talk about consent and BDSM, oftentimes we will say it is an enthusiastic yes. Just on yesterday, we had some people in the play space, and someone said, hey, could I tie you up? And the person was like, yeah, if you want to. Immediately, he backed away and was like, nope, that's not what we do. And the person caught on, and they were like, yes. So it was really exaggerated, but it was that enthusiastic consent that the person was looking for. And you want that between all parties involved in engaging in BDSM activities or dynamics. When we talk about consent, it is the cornerstone for BDSM practices, ensuring that all, whether they involve power dynamics, pain, restraint, role playing, that they are mutually agreed upon and safe for everyone involved. So we talk about consent and we call it informed consent, meaning that the participant can fully understand what will happen, including potential risk, and agree to engage willingly. And while we're on the topic of consent, it has to be with someone who is an adult. Minors cannot consent. People who are incapacitated, whether they are drunk or in some type of state where they aren't able to communicate for themselves or possibly not in their right mind, they cannot consent. Animals cannot consent. So when we talk about mutually agreeing parties, we want to disregard all of those things. But consent goes further than that, and we want to keep that in mind. But like I said, communication is going to always be important. And communication should be clear, open, and ongoing. That is essential. Before any activity, participants need to discuss their boundaries, their preferences, both soft and hard, because some things you may be kind of into, you've maybe never experienced them, but it's kind of like, I'm willing to try, and that's very different from, but you discuss those things that you are like, no, that is a hard no, we will not doing that, we will not do that, or I've thought about it before, and in due time, I wouldn't mind exploring it with you. That would be considered like a soft boundary. And any expectations you may have, ensuring that everyone is on the same page. So communication, communication, communication. And while you're communicating, you need to come up with safe words. I always laugh when I think about safe words because I think about what was it, Kevin Hart? He's like, pineapples. And I've been in a situation where somebody said that before, and it just lightened the mood and made it like so much more fun. But in any BDSM dynamics, you need the use of a safe word to ensure that consent can be easily communicated during play. These are predetermined words or signals. Oftentimes red is universal, and that means stop. Yellow will mean to slow down, and that indicates that there needs to be a pause or stop if someone becomes uncomfortable or wants to end the activity. If you aren't able to use your mouth, because some people like to be gagged, or they may not have use of their mouth, you can come up with signs. So this may be, stop, or that may be stop, or, you come up with here for green, or there for yellow, and then down for red. It just depends, as long as it's predetermined. Or I've heard of some instances where people aren't even able to use their hands in that capacity, but if you have something like a bell or a key that you're able to, maybe just drop when it's time for the scene to be over, then that's some type of cue or safe word or safe signal that you have established before. Then we want to talk about negotiations, because you need to be able, again, to clearly communicate what it is that you want, what you're willing to do, what you're not willing to do. So prior to engaging in any BDSM activities, partners should often negotiate what is allowed, what should be avoided, and what aftercare is needed. This creates a framework of trust and understanding. Understand that consent is reversible. Consent in BDSM must be reversible, meaning that participants can withdraw consent at any time during the activity. If one party says no or using their safe word, the scene stops immediately. There's no questioning behind it. It's a no, it stops, and that's just it. Consent has to be ongoing. It's not a one-time yes for everything. And it's not a one-time yes for all of my body or all of the things or anybody else you may want to bring in. Consent is based only on what we've discussed, our negotiations, our boundaries between these consenting parties, unless you've consented to bringing other people in, which is discussed during negotiations. And like I said, it's not a one-time thing. It's constant. Partners are continuously checking in with each other in order to ensure that all activities have remained consensual. And it's honestly a beautiful thing to see when you have a dynamic of people who are engaged and there's a constant check-in, whether it's a verbal thing like, are you okay? Or like a little pat or a little kiss. It just depends. Oftentimes BDSM is drawn in a very dark and sadistic light, which it can be, and there's nothing wrong with that as long as it's negotiated and consensual between adults. But there's also a very sensual side to kink, and you'll see how those different dynamics are played out in a space or in a scene, and you'll see how that communication is ongoing, whether it's like I said, just physical cues, nice touch, reassurance, whatever it is that the people are comfortable with. So talking a little bit more, BDSM commonly refers to things such as SSC, which is safe, sane, and consensual, or RAC, which is risk-aware consensual kink, both of which underscore the importance of consent and responsibility in exploring power play, kinks, or any type of sexual activity. Another important thing to remember is that it's okay to be a bit awkward at first, because this may be kind of new to you, or you may be settling in, or even in sex or anything that we do, you get in your own head, you try and talk yourself out of it. You may feel like it's weird because, let's face it, people have called people who are kinksters weirdos. So you may be like, am I weird for wanting to do this? But be assured, it's okay. Just try and be as non-judgmental as possible. Go with the flow, and as long as it's consensual and pleasurable, you are doing it right. There is no, I take that back. There's definitely a wrong way to do it, and that's without consent. But there is no predetermined and prescripted thing. Go with the flow and just have fun, even if you have a script written out. So all in all, there are tons of fetishes and kinks and philias that can be discovered, and I am so excited about delving into more of those this month. Before we started, I wanted to lay down some groundwork for exactly what kinks, fetishes, and philias are, how it needs to be consensual, what consent consists of, and just get y'all prepared for a month long of fun. So please continue to follow me as I share these kinks and fetishes and costumes that I have. I just feel like this is going to be a whole bunch of fun this month. So I want to make sure you realize that when you are working with your partner or partners, you communicate about consent, your limits and expectations. Have fun, be safe, and remember, it's all about just having fun, being open-minded, being aware, and exploring everything that it is that you need to do. And sometimes you may feel like, well, how do I learn these things? There are several ways, and throughout the month, I'll share tips with you. One way is to join a community of like-minded people. You learn so much just by watching. Get on FetLife, maybe. I heard about FetLife several years ago. Actually, FetLife has been around a long time, because I can remember somebody sharing it with me in my 20s. But that's the way you meet like-minded people. Hadn't even gone into vetting or just even more grounds of safety, because we could talk about a whole bunch of stuff, but just laying the groundwork and the framework, and know that you want to always put your safety at the forefront, the safety of the people you're engaging with. Make sure you know how to effectively communicate, because I always tell people, if you are not able to communicate effectively, accurately, informed, then maybe you are not ready for a space, because you can harm yourself and you can harm others, and that is never the intent, unless harm is one of your kinks or fetishes, but that's negotiated. But we always want to keep those things in mind. So I'm going to wrap this up. So I'm super excited about October, and more specifically Kinktober, and I will be coming to y'all soon with more Kinktober stuff. Later.